which means that the nurse's jaw is worth the same amount as the custodian's jaw. So I have some problems fundamentally with this bill. I'd much rather if you made a law that says anytime you get assaulted on a hospital property, that's a felony, as to begin to separate classes of people by law. That's my opinion.
Chairman Halsey, I do want to point out, it looks like at the bottom of page 1 on this, I believe, just to jump in, I believe the punch against the nurse in your example would be a Class A misdemeanor, just to clarify.
Even after, excuse me, thank you, Chairman, even after this bill is passed.
That is my understanding, but we can go out of session here from legal if you'd like.
Okay, and as a disclaimer, I have a daughter who's a nurse and a son-in-law who's a doctor. So
I understand. I just wanted to make sure that we had that. But it says Section 1C1, assault under subsection A is a Class A misdemeanor and shall be punished by a mandatory fine of $5,000 and a mandatory minimum sentence of 30 days incarceration. So I think it is a greater penalty, but it just wouldn't be a felony. I've got several on the list. Okay. But Chairman Halsey, did you have further questions? Okay. All right. Next on my list is Chairman Doggett.
Thank you. I was thinking about some other comments that were made. Very appreciative of that. I do have it just came to me earlier, and I just was curious about this. You have school nurses that work in the school systems. If they're assaulted by a student, are there any provisions that deal with that in this bill, or is it something totally different, maybe that would go through juvenile? But that just, if we're making an enhancement here, would it carry over into the juvenile realm if there was maybe a student assaulted a nurse while she was in the process of her duties or his duties? Thank you.
Representative Chisholm, you recognize.
From my understanding, this particular piece of legislation doesn't open up the juvenile section.
Chairman Doggett?
Okay, thank you. And I have one other question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, you recognize.
And also, I noticed in there that CNAs, certified nurse assistants, I did not see that listed in here. It said Title 67, Section 11, something along those lines was where or Section 7, maybe it was, or no, it was 11. I guess. I don't know. Anyway, what I'm saying, it comes down to medication aids in there. Would that be something, maybe we have to ask legal if that would apply to CNAs as well, certified nurse assistants?
Okay. Without objection, we're going to go out of session here from legal.
Michelle Fogarty, Legal Services. The bill defines a nurse as a person who's licensed, registered, or certificated under Title 63, Chapter 7. So if they are covered by that, then yes, but if they're not, then they would not be included in this bill.
Chairman Doggett, do you have further questions for legal? Okay. Any other questions for legal while we're out of session? Seeing none, we're back in session. Chairman Doggett, any further questions for the sponsor? Okay. Next up, I have Representative Hardaway. Although if you have somewhere to be. Okay, no problem. Leader Lamberth, you're next. Pass. Okay. That brings us back to Representative Hardaway. He's back. Representative Hardaway, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was checking to make sure that we did cover CNAs, and they are. So what I want to emphasize is if we're talking about first responders carrying out their official duties, that's a little different. And thankfully, we share that extra concern when we talk about judges, we talk about police officers. If someone's helping them in a situation, striking a police officer is a little different. Striking a judge in the courtroom is a little different than hitting the clerk or one of the witnesses. So I'm for the bill. I thank you, sir, and I urge my colleagues to support it. Thank you.
Questions have been called. All those in favor of sending House Bill 864 to calendar and rules, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, sir, you had to calendar and rules.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, committee.
Thank you, sir. Members, item number 5, House Bill 1434 is off notice. That brings us to item number 6, House Bill 1406, and I will pass the gavel to our Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You are recognized on House Bill 0880.
Thank
No,
you, sir.
Excuse me, that's the wrong one.
It's okay.
House Bill 1406.
Thank you, sir. And I do have an amendment I wish to move today, coded 4896. Second?
We have a motion and a second on the amendment. All in favor? You want to talk on the amendment first? Question's been called on the amendment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposers, no. The amendment has been put on to the bill. You're recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee. Members, this bill as amended comes from a lot of work that was done over the summer to analyze and improve law enforcement's use of force policies. Most of what you see in this bill is already in local law enforcement agencies' use of force policies, but the governor commissioned a group to get together, which involved the chiefs of police, the Tennessee Sheriff's Association, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, the Tennessee Department of Safety and Homeland Security, the Tennessee Highway Patrol, the Tennessee Department of Commerce and Insurance, and the Tennessee Peace Officer Standard and Training Commission to enhance policies, improve information sharing, and increase officer training. This partnership resulted in the governor's use of force policy committee, which issued recommendations on September the 10th, 2020, in the form of sample use of force policy for law enforcement agencies to adopt across this state. This bill, as amended, seeks to codify these best practices to ensure that the men and women of law enforcement continue to excel in their role of keeping Tennesseans safe. And quite frankly, I think it goes a long way to showing the rest of the country that in Tennessee, we lead, we do things correctly, we do things above board. And I ask for your support and seek passage of this legislation.
Okay, we have the amendment. You've heard the explanation. We have
We're on the bill.
Leader Lambert, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman, and to our chairman, thank you for all of your hard work on this. And we actually really appreciate your work throughout this entire year. You've led our committee very well, so thank you. I know you did a deep dive in this. I was uncomfortable with the last section in language in subcommittee. I still believe that no-knock warrants should have guardrails on them. I think we should put that bar extraordinarily high. There are rare circumstances where there are direct threats to law enforcement, where individuals articulate before a search warrant or any action is taken by law enforcement that they intend to kill members of law enforcement or anyone else that comes in. That's the circumstance that a no-knock warrant should be utilized. We've seen stories in the news and in the media where literally lives would have been saved had a no-knock warrant been used. I understand that this is a very passionate issue for folks. I'm not going to let that one aspect of a bill get in the way of my vote in favor of the rest of the parts of this bill. So I had raised concerns in subcommittee. I think this will be an issue that we wind up revisiting in a few years. I hope that it is not an issue that puts someone in a situation where it costs their lives. And I'm asking all of our law enforcement officers to pay very close attention to this bill, follow the tenets of it, and literally do what you do best every day, which is go out there and save lives, but keep our officers safe too, because this is a bit of a shift. I mean, these no-knock warrants are extremely rare to be used, and it will change the way law enforcement approaches this. I actually hope that long-term it will mean that folks are safer. I really do. And Mr. Chairman, I know that's what your goal is. So I had raised questions and concerns in the subcommittee, and so merely wanted to state on the record that I appreciated your work and will stand in favor of this bill today. That's just one vote. I can only speak for me. But it's just a lot of work that's been done between you and everyone else. So thank you for that hard work.
Thank you, Leader Lambert.
Representative Dixie.
Thank you. I would like to echo what the leader just said behind me. I know it took a lot of work to go in here, and I know it took a lot of movement to get, especially Leader Lambert to where he is now. I've talked to him too, so I know he's hard to move on certain things. But I think this is a great bill, and I appreciate everything that you've done for it. Because last year, several of my Democratic members, we had amendments that pretty much addresses everything that touches on here today. So I'm glad that you were able to roll that into this bill, because this is a much needed and it will save lives, many lives, whether it's law enforcement or just the regular citizens on the street. So thank you again for putting in the time and seeing the need for this. Thank you.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I certainly appreciate the sponsor bringing the bill. The contents of the bill, they're not perfect, but they're certainly light years away from where we are now. And they will get us eventually, because there's a data collection and data analysis, the ability to measure how this works out. That's even, if not more critical, as critical as the actual steps that we're taking today. Because that data collection, that analysis of data will allow us to fine tune and tweak what we're doing today. And everything from the use of chokeholds, de-escalation, which I think we need to start adding the category of non-escalation into it, or retaliation against officers who intervene or report excessive use of force or other violations. All that's important when it comes down to transparency. The relationship between the public and law enforcement is critical to the ability of law enforcement to carry out their job. Without that trust factor, law enforcement can't maximize their mission to protect the community. So I think this goes a long way towards making that happen, and I applaud the sponsor and those who have worked on this bill and the governor's office, and I urge my colleagues to support it.
I don't think we have any other questions, so if there's no objection to the question, we are voting on House Bill 1406 as amended. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposers, no. Motion carries. Bill goes on to calendar and rules.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, committee. Members, that brings us to our addendum calendar today. And on that addendum, we have one item. It's House Bill 880 by Chairman Terry. Chairman Terry is with us today. Sir, you are recognized. Sir, you have a motion and a second.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee. House Bill 880 decriminalizes patients by removing the simple possession charge for patients who comply with the provisions of the bill. Qualified patients or caregivers may possess up to the equivalent of half an ounce of marijuana or 2,800 milligrams of THC in non-smokable, non-vapable, non-edible cannabis-based medicines. And I believe the committee does have a friendly amendment.
Thank you, Chairman Terry, for that explanation. And yes, I have actually filed an amendment. It is untimely, so the committee would need to vote whether or not to consider that amendment. I'm happy to explain what the differences are. It's in the final section of the bill dealing with patients' right to carry and use a firearm. And I've spoken with Chairman Terry about this, and Chairman